Hi all. So welcome to day 7, and let me so please give me a hi so that I can start my session, today's session. Give me 1 minute, I'll be back. Yes, I am back. So in this day's session, right, so we are going to discuss yesterday's application. Yesterday we covered if you remember, yesterday we wanted to develop such system, right, and we identified in Kubernetes, right, we can do these kind of services, right. One is API layer, business layer, cache layer, MySQL database, SQL database, and then we have services. So let's, in today's session, we are going to practically see how we can host a SQL server and a NoSQL server and a cache. So we are just going to cover the three aspects of it, and then we can see how we can go from, in further sessions we are going to see how we are going to cover the things, right. So let me open a resource file. So in my GitHub repo you can find Day7 here, right. I mean, we have three things listed here. Redis, this is Cassandra, basically NoSQL DB, and then you have MySQL. So today I'm going to host all three. I mean, basically create a pod, install a Redis, and show you. And similarly I'm going to install Cassandra and show you, and similar same thing as a MySQL as well, right. We are going to host and see it. Okay, let's start today's session, right. So for my handy thing, what I did is I kept it here. So now what I have to do is I have to go to CMD and start my today it's a mostly practical session, right. Yesterday we covered whole theory session. Today we are going to cover the practical session. So I'm going to move to my K8 directory. So here I have something called as minikube start. I have already started, so I'm just telling you, I mean, in your this also you are going to do the same thing. You have to start minikube, and then let's come to one of your directories. Suppose I have downloaded everything in this here Day7 resource. So I entered into Redis. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install the Redis. I mean, basically pull the image of Redis from a web, and then install and spin a pod with the Redis, right. So let me see what all files are here, right. So we need some manifest files. There are three files are there. One is map.ml, next is a Redis config, and next is a Redis pod. Okay, so let me open that and let's see what is the content of this, so that you can understand better. Okay, so let me go to documents, then GitHub, to Day7, then I'm first going to see the Redis. So there are three files. Let me open all three files. All three files are opened. So first thing is, right, this pod, let's concentrate on Redis pod, redis-pod.yaml. Okay, so as you know, we are going to spin a pod, and then you are going to specify the name as Redis cluster, and then you are going to pull this image Redis 5.0.4, and this is the command to start a Redis cluster, right. And these are the environment variables. This is the master node, yes, and this is the port on which it is running, and this is the CPU limit what you are giving, and this is the volume mount, right. So from where since if you see the day 5's lecture, I talked about volumes and volume mounts. Basically from where it's going to map your all local data of a pod, right. and then we have something called as volumes, where I'm going to okay, I also have the configuration maps. So here if you see, I'm going to map some config, right? Whatever present in this configuration, I'm mapping here, right? Telling that config map, and the path is, since it is in the same directory, so the path remains same, that redis.config. So here it is redis.config, and these two are applied, right? With that, let me start. Let me start with this. Let me go to this directory and use command kubectl. I need to use apply -f, or let me use different command here, right? Like, let's say a -k, which means all three, files present in this directories are applied, and I have to give the current path. Okay, so there is an error here telling something went wrong here. Let me see here what it is. Okay, so let me do it one by one, or basically the name of this folder is not correct, so I need to change this, then it's going to work. Let me see what happened here. So it's looking for this customization file. It's not able to find it in this directory, but why it is looking for this? Let's debug it. Okay, the simple solution for this is, let me rename that with this and then apply. It's also going to work in that way. Let me go here to Redis folder. Let me rename this as ideally any name should work. I really don't know why it is. Maybe earlier I used this name, maybe because of that it is giving this error. But for time being, let's resolve this, and maybe in next session I'm going to tell exactly what it is. It is expecting YML file, YML, I made it. Let me make as YML. Okay, so now let's me try to reapply this. Okay, you can see that the cluster, the Redis has been created. So what happened here is, it created a CPU, it created a RAM, basically it created a machine, and then it pulled the Redis image. So you can see that from here, it pulled the image of 5.0.4 and then it applied it. Okay, let's check it out, whether whatever I am telling is right or wrong. kubectl get pods. You can see that Redis is running, right? So this is the way how we are going to spin the Redis. So this is kind of a stateless application. I put all these commands here, so probably you can also copy from here, right? Whatever the command I am using, right? So here, suppose I wanted to get into this Redis, right? So let me use this command to get into the Redis. Now I can see that I am in the Redis cluster. Can give config. So basically there is a command to get this config, whatever we configured here. Somehow I'm not getting that, but yeah, but here it is evident that I can able to go into that pod, and I can able to see the Redis cluster, since its IP address is 127.0.1, and the port is 6379. This is the same port what we given here, right? So now the first task of this is over, right? So let get out from here, and you can probably also use, right, describe pod. You can see it will show, right, at what time it is created, right? Basically it will tell, like, what is the image name and how much time it took it and everything, right? It uses. There is also volume mount setup failed in a config, like, config map. So probably that is the reason why config is not shown, but basically it works, right? Maybe in Minikube it is not possible, or like, some similar mistake has happened here, but usually, like, it can able to mount and it can able to run. Okay, now quickly move to other thing, because I wanted to cover other aspects also. Now if I go back to this diagram, right? So here we have a stuff called as MySQL. Okay, now we explore this cache part, right? I can increase also pods. Basically, if you go back to day 2 session, there I have talked about how to increase the scales. Basically, you can increase the scale sets, just change the number of replica, right? Here either you need to add that config as a replica here, or else, like, you can also use increase the scale set, so that you can make 2 pods out of it. Now let's, like, concentrate on, like, pulling the MySQL, right? So let me open the file, configuration file of MySQL. So okay, so here Redis is basically a kind of a stateless application, basically. So but whereas MySQL it's going to fall in a stateful application. So what is the difference between stateless and stateful application? Is very simple. Stateless maintains a session, and stateless, like, maintains a data, and it uses, right, a state of application. For example, in one session you give some data, and then, like, in next session, right, it remembers that data either through a local store or somewhere else, right? And then, like, it fetches that data and, like, uses it. These are, like, kind of a stateful applications. For stateful applications, so we need to have some separate kind of stuffs in Kubernetes. Basically we use something called persistent volumes, and there is also called as a stateful set. So there are 2 applications, right? One Cassandra, NoSQL, and then, like, SQL. These 2 are database are mainly stateful applications, right? So because that is where, like, everything you store. So, and whatever you store in a local storage, it should be available. So there are 2 methods of doing it. So I am showing both methods here. For MySQL we are using this persistent volume way of doing it, and for Cassandra we are going to see we are going to spin a stateful set, right? So let's concentrate here. So here again, like, I have a service. Basically what is this service means? Kubernetes service, right? So I wanted to cover theory, like, but it would be a bit boring, so let's first launch it and then understand. Service is just like your Windows service or something, right? It is a background daemon kind of thing. But in Kubernetes world, what service means is, it's basically a network abstraction. Suppose you have a set of pods, right? So usually we mention it in a selectors, right? Suppose in a selector, suppose I'm going to spin, like, 10 pods with a name starting from MySQL. Then all these, like, pods are bonded by set of, right, IP and port. So when I'm going to say, like, MySQL dot 3030.60 06 when I'm going to connect. So it didn't indirectly going to like a load balance between all pods. So this is where like it's a network abstraction on top of the pod. Okay, so let's go to our CLI here. Now I'm going to move to MySQL. Here I'm going to apply this one by, okay, last time we used kubectl apply -k we used. Let's try to use -f here. Okay, so here I need to give mysql.yaml. okay, you see that service has been created. You can query and see it. kubectl service, sorry, get service. You can able to see it's running on this MySQL is running here, right? You can see it on this port basically, right? So now let's apply this persistent volume. For that you need to use the same command with mysql /pv.yaml. You can see that persistence volumes also got created, right? So now let's come back here and let's see, when I do this persistent volume stuff and service stuff, automatically we got created a pod. So for that, let's see kubectl get pods. You can able to see that MySQL service is running. Basically it's taking some time to create these things. The containers are getting created. We need to wait for few seconds. Okay, now it got created. You see that it took around 83 seconds or even less than that, right, to create this, and your MySQL is running. Okay, now you say that, right, I mean it is running, so what is the proof of it? Okay, let me use this command Kubernetes run -it, which we often use to see the shell, right, I mean what it is. Okay, so now I connected to MySQL, right? So this is your SQL installed, basically one SQL instance installed. Now I can say show database, sorry, bases, then it's going to show the database. Suppose I wanted to do create databases, create database test db. Okay, database created. Now I can use database test db. If you are familiar with MySQL, it's well and good. If you are not, then I like recommend you to read something about MySQL or database, something. It's very basic thing, you might all aware of this. In this one we can do create table, everything, whatever you want you can do it. It's a full blown single instance MySQL, right? Okay, let's exit it. Right, now I came back here. So now the third aspect comes is Cassandra. Like let's quickly install a Cassandra and see. Let me delete this. Yeah, let me install the Cassandra. To do that I need to go back into Cassandra folder. So Cassandra is basically NoSQL database, right? MySQL is basically SQL database and Cassandra is NoSQL. When you say NoSQL, it is key and volume and basically key and value kind of database, and Cassandra is mainly a columnar database, right? Instead of adding the rows, you keep adding the columns, right? So similarly we have a document DB also, MongoDB. I thought like let me use Cassandra. In some other sessions I can also deploy and show you the MongoDB as well. Okay, let me open your Cassandra files. Let's see what all the files are used here. Okay, there are two files again. One is service. As you know, it creates a network abstraction. Here it's very simple example of service, right, where you say It's a kind of service, and application name is Cassandra, and it runs on this port, and the app or pods behind this would be using the name as Cassandra. And after that you can have anything 01, 02, 03, right, any name. Okay, and if you see this stateful set, right, so for MySQL you use persistent volume, but here persistent volume claims and persistent volume. So here for Cassandra I am using bit different thing. It is as a stateful set. So if you are not completely following these persistent volume sets, stateful sets, like for time being just use it. Maybe in coming session we can clear the doubts, or I request you, if you have anything, I encourage you to go and read the net, or to understand it more, or you can also discuss with me, right, what it is. I can explain you. So here you can see that in a spec, these things in service I'm telling the name as Cassandra. In replications I'm telling it as I need 3 instances of this pod, and basically this is the grace period terminations or whatever the configurations are there. We are just putting a default configurations. This is a container port. Okay, I just need, since there are 3 instances, so I'm going to have these are the these are basically intranode, TLS intranode, JMX, and CQL. All these things are used by the Cassandra basically. So we need to define a port for this. If you are going to just see Cassandra documentation, you will find all those things, right? So, and the image I'm going to get it from here. You can see that gcr.io Google samples, and this Cassandra version is v13, right? And CPU, this is what the 50M, and memory, I'm going to have the 1 gig of memory, right? So with that you can also go through other things, right, heap size and all, right? And we are using the volume mount as a storage class basically, and then we are using this parameter as PPSD SSD basically, which means that it is going to be on a SSD very fast. And then storage class is there, volume claim template is also there, right? So some of these things you may not understand, but just try to get familiar with yourself with these things. By the by time goes, you can able to understand this, right? Even to be honest, most of the some of the things even I also don't know, because they are specific to Cassandra, right? Cassandra database, right? So now we need to apply the same command here, right? So let's kubectl apply -f. Let's create service first, and then let's create stateful set, right? It says that it's been created. Now let's see it's really created or not. kubectl get parts. Okay, so you see that it creates one by one basically. So it's creating Cassandra 0. So we have 3 instances, so we need to wait till it comes back. So all these stuffs I have documented here, and I also listed folders here, folder structure, right? You can find Redis, Cassandra, and MySQL. I encourage you to do the experiment and try to understand yourself what they are, right? So here are some of the commands which can explain you more things. For example, here kubectl get. So this is a stateful set, right? I mean, we used to say get pods. Here we are using the stateful set. Since stateful set is stateful set is basically a Kubernetes object, so which right, basically which manages all your stateful applications. So it's still telling 0 is ready out of 3. So let's wait for a few more seconds and see for this. So meanwhile, if you have any questions, right, just put it in a comment section, because I just wanted to know if you have any questions, since it giving some error. I'm not sure why it is giving error, but ideally it should work. Let me see, get pods. I think something happened to my Kubernetes instance. It got restarted or something. Okay, let me see videos, because that's where I install my, it says this is my hypervisor I'm using basically, so it says it's all good. Let me restart it here. Okay, maybe it required more memory or something, or something happened here and I'm not able to do it, but let me try it by restarting this Minikube. Somehow it's not able to reach this. Don't know what happened. But I tested it earlier. It works fine with those commands, so there is no issues in those commands. Somehow my instance is not working properly. Let's wait for this and see what happens. So meanwhile, if you have any questions, do ask me your questions. So it's working. Okay, it's telling that the VM is having a trouble accessing this URL. It's all good. I really don't know what's happened. Okay, so with that, right, probably you can also try it from your side to execute this. I updated all the commands here, right? It works fine basically. It shows all three pods using the Cassandra, and then I can able to get into Cassandra instance and execute few of the commands, right? So with that, I wanted to keep this session very short, and now you see, if you see this bigger picture, now we covered these two aspects, right? SQL and NoSQL, and then cache aspects of it, right? They basically here, if I come here, right? So these two cache aspects, SQL and these things are done. Now in tomorrow's session, let's see, right, how we can deploy the Kafka and we also seen the services, right? One services for SQL node and one services for NoSQL node. So in next class we are going to spin off the Kafka pod, and then we are going to deploy few API here. Basically API and business logic, these two are the separate. We are going to spin up a separate pod with our own written code. Basically for API I use Spring Boot to write a small code, and for business logic also I use Java to write a very simple code here. And then let's try to connect all these end to end. From API maybe I'll create maybe I'll just create a school, or because since ours is school application, right? So these are the things we are covering, right? So fee collection or something. So basically there should be a create fee, right? Or a create school or create bus, right? I'll just try to write a simple service for you, and then we are going to put and see end to end how it works, right? So if you have any question, please let me know. I think something happened to my pod, actually Minikube, so I need to debug this and see what's happening here, right? So I'll execute this Cassandra command in next class, and I can show you. Meanwhile what you can do is you can also try it from yourself and let me know if you have any questions, right? So I'm just waiting for any questions. If you have you can put a question in the chat. If not, I'm going to close the today's session. Thank you.